Welcome to the Leadership with Vision podcast by Austin Gardner. For more information and resources, visit worldevangelism.net.
Well, welcome back to Leadership with Vision. I'm here with Jeff Bush, as always, as the co-host of Leadership with Vision, and we are talking about crossing the cultural divide, learning how to adapt to the new culture. And so today we're going to talk about becoming bicultural. And so I'll let you start up there, Jeff, give a greeting or whatever you'd like to say, and we're trying to help the missionaries as they learn to adapt to that new culture.
Well, I'm glad for this opportunity. I hope we can be a blessing, an encouragement to those that are out there serving the Lord on the field. And if you haven't made you're on deputation, you're getting ready to go over there, I think this would be great advice for you to listen to, and I hope that everybody will put this in practice. I think it'll help you greatly in your ministry. Remember, if you help the people out, then your ministry will go further, and as a result, you'll be much happier in what God has called you to do.
The things that I will say to you today come from experience and from reading a lot of books. I obviously didn't come up with the big words that I use when I'm doing this, but anyway, one term that's used is to become bicultural, and that means once you move to this new country, you're no longer just like an American, but you're still not like one of them. It's like I have all this Americanism stuff in me, but I'm trying my best to adapt to the other culture, trying to become one of them, trying to enter into this new culture, trying to be one of them, and so it kind of makes me two cultures, bicultural. I'm still American. I arrived on the field. I was like 31 years old. I don't think you're going to throw away 31 years as easily as you think. So we're not talking about being schizophrenic or fragmented or broken. We're talking about developing a new self, a new personality. We're talking about entering into their society and being as much one of them as you possibly can.
You know, if we, as missionaries, we go over there, obviously we can't become 100% only of what that country is, but at the same time, we have to realize there's a balance there. You know, the Bible says that we're now citizens of heaven, so we do not belong only to the United States of America, if that's where you're from, or only to the other country. We have to come bicultural, right there in the middle, and realize, you know, things that they are doing, they're definitely different. They're not things that you're accustomed to, maybe the way that they eat, maybe the way they talk, or whatever it is. But we have to become one of them. When we become one of them, then we can better reach those people.
So we're bonding with them. Now, there is a negative aspect of this, and it's called going native. And going native means you reject your culture. And oftentimes a brand new missionary on the mission field will reject his American culture, his European culture, wherever he's from, and he'll act like, well, you know, I hate my old country. I love this new country. I hate what I was. I love what I have become. They are so much better than us. And so that's like going native. You would become so much, you get this bad attitude towards your original country. And that's not what's expected, and it's really not what's good, because you are bicultural, you have a family, and most of us are not immigrating to that country never to return, or making a decision that says that our children will never return to our home country.
So one of the ways maybe that we could adapt to that culture, we can become bicultural, is if we would accept a insider's name. And for example, I'll use my own story. When I arrived over into Argentina, my name is Jeffrey, and it was very difficult. I remember many times I would go up and they'd say, "Y tu nombre?" Your name is? And I'd say Jeffrey, and they'd say, "What?" And I'd say Jeffrey, and they'd say, "Huh?" And I'd say Jeffrey, and they'd say, "Would you spell it?" And I'd say Jeff. What? And I thought, this is for the birds. You got to be kidding. That's not a Spanish name. And so I adopted Jose. Most people would call me pastor. But whatever you do, wherever you're at, a good friend of mine named Tyler, he adopted the name Omar. And a lot of people know him as that, and that's the only thing they knew him for. But you can adopt a name. You could be better adapted to wherever God places you.
When I got to Mexico to learn the language, I was told clearly that I would need a Mexican name in language school, and that was pretty hard. And so we took my name Austin, and we looked at every way that can be translated, and we tried to find every way it could be translated, and I didn't like any of them. And so they asked me what my other name was. My other name was William, and what I didn't know that in Peru they would accept the word William, but in Mexico they didn't. So I went with the Spanish version of William. I had lunch with a family that's new to Vision yesterday, and he is Russian and Ukrainian, and his name in English is Peter, and we were standing there talking. His wife's name won't translate, so they just kind of anglicized her name. But she said, "I'm just not lucky as he is. His name is really not Peter. His name is in Russian, but it translates to Peter. My name doesn't translate." So our daughter Joy, Her name is Rebecca Joy, and in Spanish, Joy comes out basically like Joey, and so they never seem to get that one right. So in English, she's Joy, and in Spanish, she's Rebecca, and it's been known that way all this time. So you want to get a name that says, I'm one of you. Let's see, what country was I just recently in? I was in a Spanish country. I can't remember if it was Chile with Jason Holt maybe, and we pulled up to the thing and asked his name, and he gave a Spanish last name, and so like when I was in Peru, I would often say that when they asked me for my name, when it wasn't a legal document, I would say Guillermo Bautista de la Cruz, which is literally a good Spanish name. It means William Baptist of the Cross, and because they never can spell Gardner. And hey, most Americans can't. If they're going to write me, they call me Gardiner. And so develop a name so that you live in your country. You're only going to be visiting America every fifth year. Move to your new country.
So you want to become one of them. And part of the putting a name that belongs to there, obviously you could have the attitude of, hey, look, I'm American. This is what my name is. Look at my documents. So, take it how you like it. It really doesn't matter to me. They should know I'm American. I'm not ashamed of that. But you got to be careful. You want to be accepted by them. You want to be able to minister there. So accepting a name is not just, I want to change a name so it sounds easier. Accepting a name is actually accepting their culture. And you got to be very careful, because many Americans will go over there and they'll say, hey, these people don't understand. They need to learn. This is the way we do it in the United States. Or somebody needs to teach these people. Well, they never learn how to do things. And you got to be very careful. The way they do business is the way they do business. The way they eat is the way they eat. The way they do things, it's different. That doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just different. So we have to accept their culture.
Okay, so moving on to another problem here. The problem is that when normal bonding doesn't occur, is not established, we reject the people, or we even abuse the people. It's reflected in things that we say like, oh, these people. Why do they always do things this way? Somebody ought to teach them. Won't these people ever learn? And so do you understand what's happening here? You got to become one of them. That's what Brother Jeff was just talking to you about. You've got to become one of them. If you don't become one of them, you have this superior attitude. It's called also paternalism. You're like a dad, and they got to adapt to you. And so we don't want that attitude to take place in our lives. We want to adjust to them. We're not talking about sin here. We're talking about things we grew up with that are just different because of the part of the country we grew up in.
It's very sad, Pastor, you've seen so many times that a missionary kid will actually have a bad attitude about the country, and that's not really in the kid. A kid just parrots what his parents say and what his parents think. But so many times, because a missionary can't adapt, he goes through that culture shock and he says, I don't even understand these people. This is a dumb way to do things. Because he thinks that, all of a sudden now his kids think that. And you want your kids to enjoy living there. In fact, you as a man, as a missionary, as a person, you want to enjoy it. The more you can adapt to it, the better you will enjoy it. So start thinking about it. Start praying about it. And when you get over there, do as much as you can to become like the people so that you'll enjoy where you live. You'll enjoy ministering where God has placed you.
Don't hide out in your house. I heard of a missionary this week that she only leaves the house to go to church and goes to the store once a month, and she doesn't know how to do anything in town. Missionaries can go to language school and then come home and hide. They're afraid, and it's sad. They're not comfortable with the people. They don't adapt to the culture. So they go join the country club to hang around with the rich people. Sometimes they don't even show up for regular church. Their kids hate being there. Their life is horrible, and all they do is count down to when they can get back to America.
Pastor, we said many times that we have to remember the whole purpose of why we're going there. And sometimes it's so easy because of culture shock, because of the aggravation points, and, the people are just like this. You have to remember the whole purpose of why you're going there. You are going there to minister to the people. You are going there to give your life so that other people can hear the gospel. But if you throw up these blocks and these walls of, I'm an American, or this is the way I do it, or I don't accept how you do it, then all those walls are up so strong, the people will never accept you. Therefore, they will never accept the message that you're trying to preach to them.
Isn't it amazing? Jesus didn't just come to give the gift of salvation. He gave himself. And along with your ministry, you want to give yourself. You need to realize that God has called you to help them, to be a blessing to them, to sacrifice your comfort and your convenience so that you can reach out to them. And they'll respond favorably when they know you love them and you want to be there for them. So go to the field and remember why you went. You're there to give your life for Christ, to give your life for the gospel, to give your life for those people.
It is never, ever easy to humble ourselves. Let's be honest. Just like language school, same thing with culture and everything else. To be laughed at or to humble yourself, to have to ask questions, to have to get help on how do you do simple basic things. As a man, that is very hard. Nobody likes to be humbled, but if you're going to be a learner, if you're going to adapt to their culture, you have to be willing to humble yourself to ask the questions, to learn all over again, to begin to be one of them. I mean, that's what a child does, and that's what a smart missionary will do when he gets over there. He learns from ground zero, and he makes his way up because he wants to be a learner. He wants to be accepted in that new culture that God has put him in.
Isn't that exactly what Jesus did? He grew, and he learned in wisdom and stature with God and man. And he was the God-man, and he limited himself. He was all God, but he allowed himself to live in a time of not knowing, even though he did know. He limited his knowledge so he would learn, and so people would accept him as one of them. I need to learn everything about their culture. I need to participate with them. I need to understand where they live, how they live, what life's like for them, so that I can really, truly care about them. If I don't know enough about them, I'll have no idea what life is like, no idea how they're living.
So I need to start studying. I need to even put myself in their shoes. In fact, look at them. Not long ago, I had the opportunity to visit a country, and someone went with me. And I remember he looked around and he said, man, I cannot believe, are they not going to paint inside this house? Are they not going to even put nice furniture up? And I told the man, I said, well, you got to think about it. The most important thing for them is the protection of the outside. They're not worried about the inside so much. In fact, it costs a lot of money for them to decorate. And he said, why don't they just put a little bit of, paint on the walls? Why don't they do it? And I said, well, that costs money. When you can put yourself in their shoes and understand, this is why they do what they do. So why are they protective of their kids? Or why do they, act like this? Maybe they don't have money. Or maybe they've seen Americans as enemies. Or maybe they've lived a different life. Put yourself in their shoes. Learn from them. Actually become a student of their culture. Learn why they do what they do. And when you become that student, you will become a greater teacher, a greater communicator, a greater person, a greater missionary to get the job done that God has called you to do.
Remember that you're going to have to learn the language, or you'll never get inside of their culture. And then, if I could say, in their language, on their television stations, there are going to be programs that are based on real life for them. Now, I can really only speak to Spanish world with much authority, not a whole lot of that even there, and a little more authority with Peru. But in Peru, there are programs that would show you what it's like to live inside a Peruvian home. Multiple families living in the same home, the relationship between mother and daughter and or wife and mother-in-law, or husband and mother-in-law. All of that's going on. I need to learn that they don't live like I live. Things aren't at all like what we are. They don't think a squatty potty is something weird. They don't think that putting the toilet paper in a trash bin beside the toilet is something weird. They think of it as that's the way life is, and they would think the way we do things is weird.
Pastor, there's so many examples here when we lived in South America, how everybody shares a drinks out of the same one, or how we'll put a salad on the middle of the table and everybody uses their fork and everybody uses the same bowl and pulls out of it.
Yeah, everybody's eating together.
Everybody does everything. And, an American would think, what in the world? As an American, we have, all our personal space. There doesn't exist personal space in much of Latin America and much of other parts of the world. But if I can become one of them, why do they do these things? They really do love their family like we love ours. They really do enjoy things like we do. They're not miserable. So I have to become one of them to actually learn how they think and how they do things. Because, actually, when a missionary becomes one of them, he becomes much happier. He realizes, wow, there's a bigger world out there. And I think a missionary will, kind of grow his understanding and what biculturalism really is.
And I think that what we want to remember is that we have a tendency to think our culture and our country is all superior. And so we want to avoid that concept. We want to avoid that attitude. We want to realize that we are not better than they are. And so remember, you are trying to cross the cultural divide. Communication is your goal. You know the gospel, but until you can communicate the gospel, you'll never be able to get the gospel to them. So somehow you've got to move from your side of this great Grand Canyon between you and them, and you've got to get across onto their side of the canyon so you can take the message from your side of the canyon to them. And communication is the goal of that, to identify with their culture, to have them accept you as one of them. So from now on, as you are moving towards this first 2 years of ministry, your major emphasis is language.
So Pastor, it's not just the language, it's that culture as well. I think you've mentioned, I know it's happened so many times to me, but sometimes those jokes that they'll tell, they have double meaning. And you understand the language, but you don't understand the meaning. And until you become bicultural, why don't you give the example of, you've said many times that when you arrive down there, they said, you're going to find a lost bullet. And what did that mean in that culture?
I was in Mexico, and we were up in the mountains, and this Mexican man said to a missionary that I was with, and a Mexican man that helped me, both of those men helped me very much learn to adapt to the culture and the language. And we were in a store, and the guy said, y'all need to get off this mountain or you're going to find a lost bullet. And I understood very well those two words, lost bullet. It never even dawned on me that he was saying somebody's going to shoot you. It never dawned on me that he was saying, if you don't get out of here, there's somehow an accidental bullet's going to find you, buddy. And I never even we got in the car and we were leaving, and they were talking about it, and it was all in Spanish, and they were they knew exactly what it meant, but I had no idea. Just because you know the words doesn't mean you know anything.
So what would be some successful ways that I can learn the new language, the cultural involved in that, wrapped up in that new language?
Well, I think that we learn the language if we live where the language is spoken. I would challenge you to not even work on learning the language until you arrive on the mission field, because as you learn in the United States or your home country, often you will learn with a bad accent, bad grammatical form, and everything else. And so the Brewsters, who wrote the book that we always emphasize to your language acquisition made practical, they said swimming is best learned wet. In other words, we believe in total immersion. So I need to be motivated to learn the new language. If you throw me off in the water to learn how to swim, I bet I'll be motivated enough to try to learn how to swim. You can't dangle your toe in the water and think you're going to learn how to swim. You have to be motivated that you will do that. So you're going to learn just a little by little. It's a slow process, and you learn little by little. So you want to learn, you want to prepare for studying the language. So take some steps and work towards it.
Okay, those steps, for example, what are some basic steps I could take? I can begin to prepare. And if I can scoot back a little bit, you talked about that motivation. That's actually a decision that I must make. It's not based on a talent that I have. Lord knows there's men who are very talented that do not learn the language. And there's men that are not so talented, not so smart, that do learn the language. So that motivation, that's inside of you. If you really want it, you'll find it. If you have that attitude of, hey, buddy, I'm going to get this whether it kills me, you will learn. So you jump in there, you're thrown in there, you're immersed in that language, but you have the right attitude of, hey, I'm motivated. Nobody has to push me. I am motivated. I am going to learn this because I want to share the gospel with other people. So there's two of the ways. A third way would be that you know how to proceed with the language learning, step by step, day by day, how you can learn that language.
So what you want to do is you'll go to language school, and they will go over things in an orderly and disciplined way. And you need that because typically we don't learn unless we're forced to. And so once you've heard what the lesson for the day is, even though today it's only greetings, then you can leave and go out to the town and to the church and other places and practice your greetings. So you kind of prepare. I would learn how to say, what is this? What is that? How do you say? I would learn how to say, whatever I'm studying in the lesson. And then I would learn how to say, I am trying to learn your language. Please correct me and please help me. And I'm just a student. And if you'll say those sort of things and you'll be needy, they'll jump in and help you, and you'll be able to learn the language. So talk about what you have learned.
In other words, you've got to use what you know. If not, it helps you, it doesn't help you at all. In fact, as any kind of student, if the problem many times in a Bible college setting is that we learn all these things, we archive it in our brain, and we think one day we're going to use all this. But you know what? If we're not using it as we learn it, very likely we'll forget it. And so with the language, you go to language school, a structured language school. But after that language school, you got to go practice and use what you are learning. You have to communicate that with other people and just keep practicing and practicing. The key is practicing, and let somebody, correct you. Let somebody evaluate you. Let the other guys around you say, no, that didn't make sense. And say it again. But as you use it, as you practice with it, you will become much better. You will learn it, and you'll be accepted by the people when you do.
And remember, this is going to be humbling. Amazingly, you spent a couple of 3 years on deputation where you got built up, and everybody said you was a great man of God. But now you're going to find out you're a child, and you don't know anything, and it is going to eat you alive. The senior missionary you may feel like he's looking down on you. The nationals are looking down on you. You're going to feel like you're on the bottom of the barrel looking up, and there's no way to get to the top. stop. And so just decide, I'm going to do what it takes to learn this language, to adapt to this culture, to move in with these people.
So the culture and the language, both of them, we're going to become bicultural. But most all that is really based upon your attitude. Are you going to have an attitude of being a learner? Are you willing to be humbled? Are you willing to be laughed at? Are you willing for other people to say, that's not how you do it, without getting upset? Because if not, boy, it's going to hurt you, and other people aren't going to want to correct you.
And you are the one who is there to carry the gospel. So be careful what your attitude is. Be careful to die to yourself on a daily basis. Be careful to pick up your cross. Be careful, because otherwise you won't learn the language. You want to keep positive, but you want to keep humble. You want to keep believing, but you want to be teachable. And to be honest with you, I will speak to Americans. On the whole, we're not very teachable people.
You know, it's hard for me to be teachable. It's hard for any of us to be teachable. But you know what? If you strive at it, if you push for it, you can learn. I mean, you can even do better. You know, some guys, they say that you have to have all the talent, or let's say on basketball, you have to be tall and you have to be strong and you have to be able to dunk it or whatever it is. But if you're just willing to put out the effort, man, you could be one of the best players out there, because the guy with talent isn't going to try as hard. The guy who knows he doesn't have all the talent, he's going to try harder. And the missionary who knows that he preaches awesome, he's not going to try as hard. The missionary who has the talent, he's not going to try as hard. But the missionary who realizes, man, this is going to cost me something, he's going to get further. And so, man, I challenge you, friend that's listening, push yourself. You can learn that language well. You can become one of them. You can be accepted by the people. You can do a great work. God wants to use you, but you got to get in your heart and in your mind. Try as hard as you can. Learn the language. Learn the people. Just do everything that you can and get the job done.
All right. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed today's podcast, and we would welcome your comments, and we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to go to worldevangelism.net and leave a comment. You can email me at gardner@bcwe.org, GARDNER @B as in Baptist, C as in committed, W as in world, E as in evangelism.org. And Jeff, what's your email?
Bush, BUSH, @visionmissions.com.
So feel free to contact us. We love you and appreciate you, and look forward to talking to you again next week. Thank you for listening. Share the podcast. Tweet about it if you would. Post about it on Facebook. Help us get more people listening to this podcast.
You've been listening to Leadership with Vision by Austin Gardner. Visit worldevangelism.net to discover more podcasts and useful articles.